All right, we're going.
All right. Well, we're on to week 3.
Yep.
Um, I texted you after the Monday night game, and I said 2-3 is better than 4-1,
One and
uh,
four.
or 1-4 rather. Yep. So we had a 1 game improvement, and I think 2-3, and we had a swing game there with the Browns and the Jets. It's an all-time bad beat. Um, Pretty tough for me too, considering it also knocked me out of Survivor, um, which was tough to take, and I had to watch that on an airplane. So I was stuck at 30,000 feet
Good.
in just a moment of pure rage, and having absolutely no outlet to release that rage, which was just incredibly challenging. We were pretty far off on the other 2 games, I think. That Monday night game was just not good. And it felt early, felt like early we were just off on that one. Um, and then what was the other one we had? We took the Saints over the Bucs, and close game for the most part, and then just the Bucs kind of took over the game, and that was it. But I don't know, what were your thoughts on week 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had good reads. I think, funny enough, some of our best reads have just been on, once again on games that we ended up just not taking at all.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so I think we're still kind of figuring that out, and maybe we still got to kind of flesh out the process of figuring out what games we actually want to take. And um,
yeah,
I feel like this week I kind of have an ugly card, and maybe that's just what we need. Maybe we just gotta, kind of get back to our roots, get back to finding, the money and the crumbs, right? Like we used to
yeah,
do, and
yeah,
kind of look at these ugly games that people might be ignoring. And yeah, I think that's it. I think we just maybe have to be less picky, and these games where we say, "Oh, I feel this way, but I don't want to bet on this team." I feel like we can't. I feel like no team should be off limits, right? I feel like we kind of. I think a lot of
yeah,
times we got to have a short term memory. I think we try and hold grudges, but that holds us back from maybe taking games that we like. I think we can't be flip flopping off of one week. I think that if we felt one way about a team, we got to kind of stick to that and
yeah,
kind of ride it out. Like I'm not suddenly scared of the Vikings. Maybe we do avoid them in primetime spots just because that's a legitimate trend, and we do see Kirk Cousins
yeah,
fail in that. But just because and I'm not saying that's a pick that I have this week. I'm actually kind of neutral in that game, but we got the Vikings back in a 1 o'clock spot again, and we know what they do in those opportunities. So, yeah, I don't think any team should be off limits. I think just like I said,
yeah.
short term memory, and just kind of go with
You
what
know,
we
it's
know and trust our gut.
Well, it's interesting too. Like, I mean, to your point about like, it seemed like we had a lot of good reads and we didn't go with them. Like, we talked about the Falcons plus 10.5. Talked about the Cowboys plus 7. Last time they lost Dak, they had that big win over the Vikings, Monday night. We were talking about the Texans plus 10. I'm glad we avoided the Raiders game. We talked about the Packers minus 10. I mean, the 1 game we were way off on obviously was Bills Titans. We were kind of leaning Titans with those 10,
Yeah,
but I mean,
and I
there's
was
there's a
feeling
lot
good
of,
in that first quarter, I must say.
yeah, yeah, no, no, no. But again, like there was a pretty huge swath of games last week, even Dolphins plus 3.5, where like, you know, as we were talking about these games, we were on the right side. We didn't feel compelled enough. We didn't. Ourselves that that was the pick.
Yeah,
And I think too, like, one of the things maybe just in the process for us to think about is, you know, I know last week there was 1 game, I think we were both on the Saints,
yeah,
and it was like kind of an automatic pick. And maybe like when we have those moments where like both of us are just jumping to one side, do we need to kind of like take a minute and say, like, hold on, let's interrogate the other side there.
yeah,
Like, is there a blind spot we both have that we're not seeing? And maybe we end up talking ourselves off of one.
yeah,
So that's something to look at too.
yep.
Um, but all right. Well, should we dive into the games?
Yeah, so I think I'll lead with two things, and I think maybe this is a bit of an indicator of where I'm going to go with my picks tonight.
Yep.
Um, so two different categories of teams I want to read. We got 9 home dogs this week. So we have the Pats plus 2.5, Dolphins plus 6, Jets
Yep.
plus 5, Panthers plus 2.5, Colts plus 5.5, Titans plus 2, Commanders plus 6.5, Cardinals plus 3.5, and Broncos plus 1.5. We also have 7 winless teams that are playing this week. So 7 teams. I said winless because 2 of them are not 0-2. Texans and Colts have a tie. They're
Yeah,
0-1
yeah,
and
yeah.
1.
Yep.
And then we also have the Titans, Panthers, Bengals, Falcons, and Raiders. So those are 7 teams that are also looking to get their first win this week. Some of the ones that cross over, what we're looking at. Okay, the Panthers are looking to get their first win.
Mhm.
So Panthers at home are winless. Colts are winless at home. Titans, and those are the 3 teams, and then the other 4 are on the road this week.
Okay. All right. I will also just share a stat that I heard today related to that. Let me just flip to the game where I have it. Since 2012, 0-2 teams going against non-0-2 teams are 60% against the spread.
Yeah, so like I said, me reading those was pretty indicative of where I'm going to go. Um, love the home dogs this week. Love
Mhm.
the winless teams this week.
All right. Well, the first game of the week is a home dog.
Yep.
So we have Ravens minus 2.5 at New England. Is this one of your home dogs?
So this wasn't one of my loves. I do think the Pats are interesting here just because I look back at that 2020 game where they had Cam Newton. They
Mhm.
did win 23-17. I could see a very similar game plan, a similar win here. Um, I think it's tough to love the pick. The Ravens, even in the loss, they did look good. I mean, they did look pretty bad. Their defense looked very bad down the stretch. That could be a concern, and that could be the kind of a pathway. I'd really like to see the Pats come out and sling the ball this week. I'll be kind of pissed if they come out and just try and run it down the gut. I feel like you got to try and take advantage of this Eagles or Ravens secondary that's maybe a little beat up. We just saw them get really exposed, of course, by 2 elite receivers that the Pats don't have anybody in that caliber. But I do think the Pats are in here, but definitely not one of my loves.
Yeah. There, this also feels like a pick to me where it's like, Baltimore only having to cover 2.5 like that. Even though they lost last week, given how explosive they looked, how dominant they were in week 1, everybody's like loving Lamar. Is this a trap game from a betting standpoint where, and I was even looking at Odd Shark, I think 83%, um, at least being reported on Odd Shark, 87% on the Baltimore side.
Yeah,
Um,
and for Action Network, which is just using, their data is just Action Network users, but 79% of the bets are on Baltimore, but only 67% of the money. So there is some
Sharp
sharp
money's on
action on
the
New
Pats.
England's side.
Yeah.
I think my big concern is just that 2.5 number. For the most part, you're kind of betting on the Pats to win. So it just comes down to how confident are you in a Pats win, and when we're only picking 5, maybe it's too much of a toss up. But I mean,
Mhm.
I definitely like the Pats side here. That could just be one that we kind of put aside because I'm not like married to a 5 tonight. So
Yeah.
could be
Yep. Yep. All right. So we got a Pats lean.
yep.
All right. Let me just mark that. Yeah, I mean, a couple other things that I was writing about this too is like, just talking about the offense and defense matchups. Like, I mean, Baltimore's run game is atrocious.
Yep.
I mean, it's only admirable because of Lamar, but if you can, and I don't know that you can contain Lamar, but if you can, like outside of Lamar, like there is no run game.
Yep.
And so they're really going to be relying on his ability to, create with the legs, but also, they have had a pretty explosive, passing game, but I feel like that's also playing into New England's strength on defense. So it's going to be interesting to just kind of see how that Pats secondary, that Pats D, does hold up. But I mean, look, you're talking about a defense that held Miami, technically to what, 13 or 14 points
They
because
only scored one touchdown.
they only scored one touchdown.
Then the other one was that scoop and score.
Yeah, the scoop and score. So, and
And the
then
touchdown was that crazy Waddle one on fourth down,
yeah,
which is just like a complete breakdown.
yeah.
So
So this is a really good D,
yeah,
a very good D.
yeah,
Um, and as you were saying, like that was something else I heard on podcast I was listening to. They talked a lot about how beat up. Like, I mean, it's just not like a little banged up. Like that Baltimore secondary is really beat up. Um, so there's an opportunity to exploit, and maybe this is a game that Mac Jones, they do let him air it out a little bit, and at home, playing with a little bit of swag, a little bit of energy, feed off that home crowd. Maybe they do come out firing.
yeah. And I like it because I definitely could see the Ravens inside of a field goal being a little trappy of a line. So,
Mhm.
Pat's definitely very interesting.
Yep. Yep. Okay. All right. Next game, we've got Bills and Dolphins. Bills are laying 6, and we're in Miami.
So this is ultimately a pass for me, but I lean Miami here. Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, both did not practice today, both dealing with injuries.
Mhm.
They have another, I forget the name, something Phillips, maybe Jordan Phillips, defensive tackle. He's also beat up, didn't practice today. So that Dolphins defense or that Bills defense could be a little beat up. Miami, they have a lot of swagger coming off of that huge win. It's a big test for both teams. Um, I could see Miami coming in, maybe stealing a win. At home, they are at home against Buffalo. I did check the history; it hasn't really had much of an impact in the
Yeah.
past. Buffalo has kind of blown them out every time they've come down, with Josh Allen. So it's really not a factor. It's not like how Brady used to go down to Miami. So there isn't that there. One concern I do have about the Dolphins is the stat about they're 11-0 against quarterbacks with an O in their last name. They're 0-9 against quarterbacks without. Josh Allen does not have an O in his last name. So there is that concern. Of course, we're not taking them to win. We're taking
There
them
is
to
that
cover.
concern.
I mean, at some point you can't ignore these stats, right? I mean, that's
No, I know it's
that's
true. It's
20
like it's
games
so
worth of
ridiculous.
data there. So
Yeah, it's such a ridiculous statistic, but it is a statistic.
yeah, and
I love.
but of course we're not taking them to win, we're taking them to cover.
Yeah,
But Buffalo has looked very good. But I do feel like that's kind of a Vegas begging people to take Buffalo, right? They see that inside of a touchdown, people could be looking to jump on Buffalo, and that could just end up being a steal, like we've kind of seen, where Buffalo's just blowing teams out, or maybe it's a little bit of a trap, and Miami comes in and keeps it tight, and maybe it comes out of there with a win.
yeah, yeah. I'm pretty aligned with a lot of the things you covered and talked about. I mean, I think it's another one. I'm not sure what the Action Network says, but Odd Shark has 76% on Buffalo, which again, that's heavy, public lean, and is that line trappy?
Yeah, it's 72% on Buffalo, 76% of the money on them too.
Yeah,
So slight sharp action, but it's still a heavy public line.
yeah. And I think there is just a lot of, I think a lot of people now are just kind of jumping on Buffalo to just win it all with how they've looked the first 2 weeks. I mean, they've been dominant.
Yeah.
There's no question, but it's first game of the season, it was 10-10 at the half against the Rams, and they did pull away. And I mean, we'll talk about Tennessee later, but um, I feel like the reports coming in on Tennessee is just not good. They just may not be a good football team. But Miami has looked great, and they've those receivers, man, they're freaking loaded. Um, so I mean, at home, like you said, with some swagger, maybe keep it close. And again, good teams win, great teams cover. So I think Miami's an interesting lean here, but it is also scary with Buffalo. It's a little bit of like, do I feel comfortable betting against the Bills with the way they look right now? I'm not sure I
Yeah,
do.
I mean, I think this could be a good time to kind of swoop in and fade them just with the injuries to the defense. Of course, they could always just end up being late ads, as
Yeah,
healthy and not
yeah,
matter. But I definitely do like Miami here. It's a little bit of a lean, not a love, but
yeah,
yeah, we could always mark them down, come back to it.
yeah. Okay. Um, all right. Next game, Bengals -5 at the Jets.
So this is a home dog that I love. This is one of
Mm,
the picks that I love. Um, the Bengals, I just don't think are a team that I don't think they're a team that are going to get right this year.
mm,
O-line issues are just something that they're not easy to fix. That's not something you can kind of just snap your fingers and figure it out. It's also not something that you can easily just make a trade for and suddenly have everything be solved. There were the concerns going into last year when they drafted Jamar Chase, because people kind of wanted the Bengals to use that pick on an O lineman, take a guy like Penei Sewell, but they didn't. And then they went on a little bit of a Cinderella run. I think Buffalo or Cincinnati definitely came into the season overrated. I mean, I think maybe people were looking for them to regress, but I think they were still overrated just looking at that because they were so close to not even making out of the wild card. It's something that we've spoken about before already. Uh,
mhm.
but they lost because they couldn't protect the quarterback, right? I mean, Jamar Chase or T. Higgins was wide open past Jalen Ramsey on that last play, but Joe Burrow was getting sacked. It was just like that meme that people sent around where it would be the one that's like the drawing of the quarterback thrown to Chase, and then it was Sewell blocking and all that. It like actually became that meme in real life. And I don't think this is a problem that Buffalo's going to figure out. I don't think they're a team that gets right. So, I read a thing too where Burrow, he's actually created. This is before tonight's game. He's actually lost more yards on sacks than Najee Harris has been gaining pretty much. It's like it's
Mm.
pretty close there. And then I also saw a stat where it was based on scheme and pressure survival rates. Burrow is creating like a ton of sacks. So a lot of the
Mm.
sacks he's taken aren't helped by the
He's
fact that his
yeah,
O line sucks, but he's also not doing himself any favors. He's
yeah.
holding on to the ball long. He's not making the right reads, and he's ultimately taking some sacks that maybe he could have at least thrown the ball away.
Mhm.
The New York Jets, they love to tackle. I think they're going to be all over this offense. Sauce Gardner in that secondary, they can kind of keep these guys in check. And then I think this offense is starting to click a little bit. I think that they're feeling very good coming off last week's win. Of course, that was a unique situation. You don't want to put too much weight into such a ridiculous win that they put together in the last minute and a half. But they got Flacco out there slinging it. Garrett Wilson had a huge game, but also I saw tape going around where Elijah Moore was also wide open on a lot of these plays. So if it wasn't Wilson, it would have been Moore.
Yeah.
I think Moore is due for a huge week soon, and we've seen that Wilson obviously can hang. So I think this offense is feeling good, and I think Jets +5. I mean, the Jets beat the Bengals outright last year. They had Mike White starting at quarterback. There is precedent here. I do like the Jets here.
Um, yeah, you might have talked me into it. You might have talked me into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Um,
like I said, I came in with an ugly card, and I think that's just kind of how we have to play this week. And I think the Jets are feeling good. I think at some
here's
point because I think Salah is their guy. I think that is their coach. And
man,
I know last week I liked the Jets. And we actually ended up flipping on that, and I think we did make the right call. And it was just kind of a freak accident. What the hell happened there?
I mean, yeah, I mean, Chubb also could have gone out of bounds.
Yeah, I
And
mean, it was just, and what's so funny is that Chubb was a guy that was under fire a couple of years ago for not scoring that touchdown.
yeah, yeah,
But
totally.
and that's what's so funny is that also now it's truly like damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, yeah.
But
The I mean, here's the other thing that does make me like the pick for the Jets is we haven't liked Cincinnati all year. I mean, we took and we even called Pitt winning outright in week one. Since he was 6.5 point favorites in that game. and they didn't look good. They didn't look right. Um, and then even last week, talking about the Cowboys who had lost Dak, and we obviously were referring back to last year's game against Minnesota on Monday night, but that was another game where we were kind of leaning like, maybe the Cowboys can cover here. And I mean the Bengals have just looked terrible. They've looked like a bad football team. Despite having all of those weapons, which, is concerning. And it's not like they've been playing a really difficult schedule. Like, I don't think Pittsburgh is they're not a good team. Um, I don't think the Cowboys are a good team. Um, like, these are teams that they should be beating, and they're looking bad. They're getting beat.
Yeah.
So
And the Jets are holding quarterbacks in check. I mean, you know, I guess maybe you could argue that Jacoby Brissett throwing for 229 yards isn't a great thing.
yeah,
But they're not giving up a ton of air yards. Um, they're doing an okay job. I mean, they did an okay job last week, defending the run. And then, in Baltimore they gave what 24 points. Lamar only threw for 213 yards. I mean, he did have three touchdowns. I think he had all three of them were bomb touchdowns, but they're not really getting torched either. And, I think that this Jets defense, I think they can play. And I think it's kind of like last year how, we found kind of the recipe for teams that can win and cover against LA last year, right? It was teams
yeah.
that could hold on to the ball and run the ball effectively. And then teams that also had a good secondary. And those were teams that were, no matter what the spread was, they were giving them a good game. And, that might just be the trick here where, we got a defense that loves to play physical, loves to tackle. They're going to be able to apply that pressure to Burrow. And then they got a secondary that can kind of hang. And, Sauce Gardner's really, really good. And
Yeah.
I think that New York can keep it close. And, if we get screwed because, of a late score or something, then whatever. I think that we're gonna feel good all game because I think it's gonna be a back and forth game. And I think New York can keep it close. I think they can actually win it outright too.
They got weapons. They got
Yeah, and
weapons.
it's at -5, right? I mean, I always say I hate -5, -5.5, and then I usually go against my gut. But it's an ugly number, and I think that these first three spreads that we've looked at, it just feels like Vegas is begging people to take it. And I'm looking at Action Network, 88% of the tickets are on Cincinnati, 92% of the money, but that's a huge, huge public,
Yeah,
public percentage.
yeah. And we're getting 6 at the Circa,
Yep.
so get the extra point there.
Yeah. I just don't see the get right game. I don't think that's going to happen for a while with Cincinnati.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, look, like the actual result could be that Cincinnati does win the game, but all we're looking to do is cover.
Yep.
We're getting the points to cover, so they could come out of this 1-2 and feel like they've got a little bit of a not a true get right, but I mean that's probably the only thing that I would just go back to is that stat I said earlier of you know 0-2 teams playing non 0-2 teams 60% covers
Yeah.
against the spread since 2012. But there's 40% in there that that didn't.
Yeah.
So I think we're just banking on them being part of that 40%.
Yeah.
Um, all right. So I think right now we're that's a love for the Bengals.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got that marked. Let's see. Next game, we got the Saints -2.5 against the Panthers, and they're in Carolina.
So this is another love for me.
Okay.
It's going with my theme. I think this is another spread that it's just, it's too convenient for the other side, but I love the Panthers here +2.5. Just another 0-2 home dog. Jameis has looked bad. I think the Saints have looked bad. Their defense has not looked good. They gave up a ton of points to the Falcons. How many points did the Bucs end up scoring? I don't think it was too much. I think they held them in
20,
check a little bit, right? What was it, 20-10?
20 to 3 or something.
It was 20-10.
Okay.
Of course, Mike Evans was out for however long, and
Yeah.
then Brashad Perriman, Scotty Miller, Russell Gage became the offense. So, you can also kind of take that number with a grain of salt. But, I just think the Saints have looked bad. They have not impressed me. Even with Michael Thomas playing well, Jarvis had a good game. Olave's been getting targets. He hasn't necessarily had the production yet, but he has been getting the looks. But Kamara hasn't looked great either. And this is just a team that I think they had high hopes. I think they're looking back, there should have been a little more skepticism with the offense. I think people were maybe putting their eggs in Jameis's basket, maybe rushing a little too quickly to do that. But Jameis has looked bad. He's playing hurt. But also with the Panthers, it's just like, this is an 0-2 team that I think needs to get that win soon. Their two losses have been so close. They're 24-26 against the Browns. That was a very winnable game for them. And then they lost 16-19 to the Giants last week. So I just feel like they're due. So I feel like this is one where, the Saints inside of a field goal, it just feels too easy to me. I look to the other side. I like the Panthers here to kind of get that first win.
Any concerns with what's the head coach's name?
Matt Rule.
Matt Rule. Like, is this the week he gets fired? Because
I don't know. I feel like it's too early for that, especially with how close their games have been. I mean,
here's the thing. They got the Saints this week, and then listen to this. And then they've got Arizona, which maybe isn't as difficult as it might have felt a few weeks ago. But they got Arizona, San Francisco, they got the Rams, and they got the Bucs.
Yeah, I think that's a tough stretch, but I mean, I feel like 3 games out, and I think this is a winnable game.
Yeah.
I think if you're gonna fire him, you do it. Maybe after that. And,
after that, right?
I feel like when you're 0-6, 0-7, it's easier to just be like, all right, like you're outright bad. Where you can look at these first 2 games, you can be like, they could be 2-0.
They could be, yeah.
They could be a 2-0 team looking for 3-0. They could be kind of in that same position that the Giants are in right now, where it would be kind of a fraudulent feeling 2-0. But I mean, they're very close. I mean, they had that win in hand against Cleveland. I didn't watch the game. I mean, it came down to the fourth quarter. They lost by 3 in the fourth quarter to the Giants, and that was the difference maker.
They were in it. They were in it though.
Yeah, and that's why I like it. I mean, they've just been a competitive team, and I think the Saints have been so disappointing that the spread almost doesn't make too much sense just based off of preseason perception. But yeah, I think that I think this team's maybe a little, not that I think they're good, but I think maybe they're too good to go 0-3. And I think that I like this spot to be one where they get a win, especially with the games that they have coming up. That's just going to be so hard. And it's more, are they really going to start 0-6, 0-7, 0-8, or are they going to sneak a win in, and when are they going to do it?
Yeah. And who knows, maybe that Arizona game is actually more winnable. It's Arizona on the road too.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, Action Network, 62% of the bets are on Carolina, 86% of the money is on Carolina.
Oh, wow. I mean, the Jameis thing, I'm reading more about Jameis too. Like, it's not just the back. Now apparently there's an ankle injury. So he's dealing with multiple things. Do we know anything about Kamara? He was limited in practice. Yeah, I mean, the Saints haven't looked good. They struggled in week 1 against Atlanta. I think Atlanta's better than, I think maybe people thought they might be, myself included. But they looked terrible last week. I mean, they got nothing going. And I mean, it's not like Jameis is going to be healthier this week.
Yeah.
If anything, it sounds like he's picked up another injury and he's actually going to be worse. So that I'm not sure that's a good thing. Carolina defense is, competitive. They still got Baker back there. He's a dog,
Yeah, exactly. Like, I feel like, the way that they're built with Baker at quarterback, they're still going to be out there. They're still going to be competing. And, just with how close it is, like they're knocking on the door waiting for a win. And I think this is a spot where they kind of have to get a win. And,
I mean, this one plays into that, 0-2 team against a non-0-2 team. And
Yeah.
quite frankly, the Saints should be an 0-2 team.
Yeah.
They were very lucky. Will Lutz kicking a 55-yarder. And somebody I heard, I was listening to the Dream podcast with it's like RJ Bell and Steve Fezzik today. And, I think it was Fezzik was talking about the fact that, like, you go back and watch the tape, like there was actually a play late in that game. Falcons had the ball. I think Mariota was running on, I want to say like third down. It was like third or fourth down. And he actually bobbled the ball in his hand. And because of that, like he wasn't able to get an extra yard that would have given him the first down that would have put that game away.
Yeah.
So it's like a little like kind of happenstance thing like that happens that gave that little glimmer of hope. But I mean that thing very easily, that door could have been shut right there,
Yeah.
and they could be an 0-2 team. So okay, yeah, interesting pick. Let's mark down the Panthers here. And then if we need to, we'll come back to it. But I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
All right. Next game, Vikings home, laying 6 to the Lions.
So this was just kind of a pass for me. I feel like it's maybe too big of a line. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it is the day game Vikings off a loss. The
Yeah.
Lions, they've been a very gritty team, 1-1. Showed a lot of fight in their one loss to Philadelphia, and then had a very good win against the Commanders. So I think that we've seen that they can be a competitive team this year. The Vikings, maybe there are some questions about them just coming off of that primetime showing, but I still think they're going to be a good team. I think this could be a good bounce back spot for them. I just feel like it's, maybe a little too big to take them. And, I don't know how much I love it. I could see this being a touchdown game. So, um, I don't feel too
Yeah.
strongly either way.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion. I mean, I feel like I can make a case for both sides.
Exactly.
Um, you know, I think there is a potential overreaction spot to the Monday night game. Um, the reality is, and like you said, like, Kirk's back in a non-prime time spot, and the reality is that's a really explosive offense. Really explosive. And, this could be a game that, maybe it is a shootout, but the Vikings do win by a touchdown. And, even though it's a fun, competitive game, they score late and, go up by 7, and all of a sudden we're outside of a cover,
Yeah.
which could suck. But, on the other side, Lions have been gritty. They've looked explosive themselves. Goff has played very well. Amon St. Ra. What is Amon Ra St. Brown? Like he's been fantastic. They got Swift back there. Tons of weapons, but yeah, maybe this is just one. It's like, stack some guys from both teams in your DFS lineup and just watch
Yeah,
the
pretty
game
much.
play it, you know.
Yep.
So all right. Next game, Chiefs at Indy. And the Chiefs are laying 5.5.
So I think it's an interesting spot. I think it's another one you could kind of make arguments for both sides. I kind of lean the Colts here, though. I just think that maybe this is a little bit of an overreaction just based off of what we saw last week, where they were completely depleted. They had nobody to throw to, just kind of completely destroys whatever game plan you might have had. So I feel like it's tough to judge a team based off of that. I mean, they did get down big to the Texans week 1, but then they also had a pretty impressive comeback. I mean, you could criticize them for even being in that position to begin with, but they did show that they could kind of, buckle down and score points when they needed to. And, they turned what could have been a very ugly loss into a draw. But, they're also a team that's looking to get their first win. The Chiefs, they looked very good week 1, but he looked extremely beatable in week 2. And, I think it took, a little bit of luck and, especially, that bad play call when it came to that 99-yard touchdown, the pick 6, just keeping Everett in the game and then also throwing to him. It led to absolute disaster. But, I think this is just another, maybe, a little bit of a trap line on the Chiefs side, that -5.5. It's that ugly number I always talk about. Pittman and Pierce, they're back at practice. Like I said, it's a bit of an overreaction. Kansas City's offense doesn't look that impressive either. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's looked good, but he's also had limited touches. He's just been, rather efficient. Travis Kelce, big week one, didn't do too much last week. And, guys like Juju and Valdez-Scantling, they haven't done too much either. So it's like, I haven't been too impressed by the Chiefs. I think they're still a good team. They're still a top team in the AFC. They're not the world beaters that we've seen. But I think the Colts are a little bit sneaky here at 5.5.
Oh, and I mean, Colts beat them last year, and I mean, I think the formula was, it was a Sunday night football game. 19-13. I think the formula was they just ran the shit out of it.
Yeah.
Kept kind of tried to win the time of possession battle. Try and keep the Chiefs offense off the field. And I mean they won. I mean that was a game they won with Jacoby Brissett, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was. Yeah,
Yeah,
they won 19-13. They covered the 11-point spread.
yeah. So there's again there's some recent precedents there. I do. I mean, I do wonder, like, what's up with Matt Ryan?
Yeah.
Like, is he just like dust? Um, and is this a thing where, like, do the Chiefs have the ability to stack the box and force Matt Ryan to beat him? And is he at a point in his career where, like, he actually just can't?
Yeah.
Um, you know, so I do, like, I agree. I mean, it could be a trappy line, because I do look at that 5.5 and I'm just like, man, with the way that these two teams, have looked, it just feels like 5.5 is maybe actually too low. But that could also be them trying to bait us in to take that 5.5 when, the Colts are in a pretty, I mean, they're in a must-win situation. I mean, they went out and got Matt Ryan to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And now suddenly they're 0-2 and they're facing the Chiefs. Like, this is kind of a must-win situation for them. Like, I mean, there's no way around that.
Yeah.
So, are they going to be able to come out and play that way? So yeah, Colts is interesting. What's Action Network saying?
Big sharp action on the Colts. 70% of the bets are on Kansas City. Only 56% of the money is on Kansas City, though.
Yeah, the predicted score on Odd Sharks is very surprising. It's Colts 29, Kansas City 19.
Yeah, I mean, the more that we talk about it, the more I like it. It was definitely one that I had marked down. It just fit into that kind of criteria I started with. But yeah, I mean, it's just that 5.5 that I always say is so ugly. I hate picking it as a favorite. And it feels too good to be true, right? The Chiefs win by 6 and you cover it. It feels too good. That kind of makes me want to jump on the other side. So I think it's a good lean here.
Okay. All right. Noted as a lean. All right. Next game. Got the Raiders -2. Titans at home. It's another home dog for you.
Yeah. So 2 winless teams going against each other. We do have one of them being the home dog. I feel like this is one where something's going to give with both teams. I lean the Titans here. It's not a pretty pick. I mean, the Raiders, it's just another one where I look at it, and this is a team that I thought was going to be much better. I mean, Renfro hasn't been practicing this week. I don't really know what the reasoning was behind Devontae Adams not really being too involved last week. Waller was getting involved, so that was good to see. But Josh Jacobs just has kind of been, kind of unimpressive as a running back. Derek Carr has not been too impressive. He was very bad week one. And I think that maybe there's a bit of an overreaction to the Titans last week too. I mean, Ryan Tannehill, he obviously was playing poorly, but at the same time, he did not get benched from Malik Willis. The Bills were actually the team that they put Case Keenum out there first, so they were the ones that pulled their starters first. The game was over, so he was not truly benched. So I mean, not that it matters too much this week, but I don't think Tannehill's job is in danger, especially with the way that Malik Willis played. I think it's a while before they're looking to replace him just based off of what they have. But I just look at this line, it's just another one. I just feel like there are so many lines that Vegas is begging us to take the favorites here, and I think it's a good opportunity to swoop in and take some home dogs. Vrabel knows how to play Belichick. I wonder if that translates to playing against, Josh
McDaniels.
McDaniels.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Even with how bad the team has looked, I do kind of still like the Titans. I trust Vrabel. I think they have a culture there, and I think they can figure some stuff out. I don't think they're as bad as we've seen to start.
West Coast team traveling for an early game on the East Coast too.
Yeah,
So that that's just another.
yeah, and it's like, I mean, these are two teams that if you told me that they'd be starting 0-3, I'd be shocked to hear.
Yeah.
And hello. But I'd be, if you told me that they're going to be 0-3, I'd be like, no way. I just would not have seen that coming. So it's got to be one of them. Because of that, I definitely lean the Titans here.
Yeah, I guess, in a game like this, I'd rather bet against Carr than bet with him.
Yeah,
I
and
also
part of it too is like it's kind of been my thing. It was almost the Pats losing to the Eagles in the Super Bowl that kind of gave me that somewhat of an epiphany, I guess. But it was just like, in close games where it does seem like a toss up, no matter what the spread is, it's like, if you think it's a toss up, why not take the underdog, right? And
yeah,
if you feel like it's an even matchup, this is not something I would have thought would be an even matchup. Kind of coming into it, especially based off
yeah,
of how week one or going into the season. I like the Titans going into it, but I definitely thought,
yeah,
I was looking at the Raiders as being, a team that could be a dark horse Super Bowl contender. And, you know, there's that bad stat when you start 0-2, it's already so hard to make the playoffs. So who knows about either of these teams who I both thought could, sneak up and win their division. But yeah, I mean, I think that, it's a lot like the Colts where maybe there's a bit of an overreaction to last week. And, I don't think the Titans are as bad as we saw. And I certainly don't think the Raiders are as bad as we saw either. But,
yeah.
home team, I give them the edge in the coaching matchup. I think the rosters are a little bit closer, especially with Renfro out. And I lean the underdog here.
Yeah, I think it's a good lean. It's the right
Yeah.
call.
It's a lean, not a love.
Yeah, yep, yep. No, that's fair. That's fair. And I do agree. I think Vrabel is the alpha of the two coaches. You know, I feel like he'll just will himself to a victory over McDaniels.
Yeah.
Just seems like a guy he can't lose to a beta
Yeah.
at home like that. So, all right, let's move into the next game. So we got the Eagles -6.5 against the Commanders.
So this is another love of mine. And
Yeah.
I feel like it's a risky pick.
Yeah.
It's not a pretty one, but I love the Commanders +6.5.
So the guys on the Dream podcast, RJ Bell, Fezzik,
Yeah,
they called out today that the look ahead line for that game, I think, was Eagles -3.
yeah,
Um, so that's a huge. So they were talking about it in the context of like, you know, you kind of you're getting a lot of value here with the Commanders at plus six and a
yeah. I
half.
mean, it's the same thing I've said just about pretty much every favorite so far. Is like,
Yeah,
I just feel like it's Vegas begging us again.
yeah,
It's like, people look at Carson Wentz and the Commanders, and I feel like you look at just judging a book by its cover, you think, well, the Eagles just killed the team on Monday Night Football. They're coming off now, and they're going to keep doing that. But I don't think the Eagles are a perfect team. I think they're a very good team. I think that
yeah,
they're definitely a team we're going to be talking about in the postseason. But I just feel like this line's too good to be true from their side. It's a divisional dog at home. Since 2020, so the last four matchups, they play twice every year. Philly won 2016 and 27, or so 20-16. The Commanders covered +6.5. Philly won 27-17. It was a push on the 10-point spread.
yep,
Washington won 20-14. They covered as 6.5-point dogs and won outright. And then Washington won 27-17. They covered and won outright as 5.5-point dogs. So we've seen Washington compete, and this is definitely a better team than they've had, I'd say, in the last couple of years. I mean, 2 years ago, maybe their defense was a little bit stronger. I think that they still have a strong defense right now, but they also
Yeah.
have better quarterback play. No matter what you want to say about Carson Wentz, definitely better than Taylor Heineke.
That offenses look good.
And their offenses look very good, and they're not relying on one guy. McLaurin's, very efficient with his touches. He's not getting a ton. Curtis Samuel has looked great, and Jahan Dotson's looked great. He's been scoring touchdowns. So it's like,
Mhm.
even Antonio Gibson, who was sounding like he was losing his starting job, he's been productive as that starting running back for them too. So
Yeah.
that's a team that's been playing well, and I think that this is just a game that's going to be a little bit closer than people think, just
Yeah.
based off of name recognition.
Yeah, no, I like the call. Again, like recent matchup history, Commanders have been very good, very competitive. They've covered, what was it, 3 out of 4, and I think the other was a push.
Yep.
So obviously there's a matchup thing here. Like that's a, it's a recent matchup thing. That's a real thing. And then you're talking about a team that, you know, has shown the ability to put up points. They're at home. They're getting 6.5. They're getting 3.5 more than what the look ahead line was. So, and then just looking at as you were saying, with with where the action's at, like this definitely feels like a sharp pick.
Yeah.
So, could be one, again, kind of fade the public action, especially in week 3 where, I think we're kind of in an interesting spot where we've got 2 weeks of data. You've got some teams that have had a good week, a bad week. I definitely think there's some overreactions that are maybe, impacting the market, or at the very least, the market is maybe trying to take advantage and exploit some of those overreactions. And this might be a spot here where that's happening.
Yeah.
So, okay. Cool. That's a good strong lean. Let me just mark that. All right. Next game, we've got Bears at home -2.5 against the Texans.
I don't know if you got anything on it. Ugly
Do
game to
you
me.
do you want to just skip it?
Yeah, yeah, it's an ugly game to me. I lean the Texans, but I didn't have anything written down really.
I mean, I didn't either. I don't know. I think the Bears are bad, but I don't think the Texans are a whole lot anything either.
Yeah, I still want to give the Bears like another week or two to kind of figure it out and kind of see
Yeah.
what they have. It's just been, obviously that week 1 game was so hard to judge, but then they come back and they have Justin Fields throw 11 times. He makes the comments about the fans. It just feels like that could be, the start of something ugly. But at the same time, it's like, I still want to see it from them, and maybe take a little more time before I make any type of ruling on them.
Yeah.
The Texans, I definitely am bullish on the Texans. They were playing Denver pretty well. I mean, they had a chance to make a drive at the end and win it, and then they had the or tie it, and then they had the tie with Indy. So they've definitely been a competitive team. But yeah, ugly game. We can just move on.
Yeah. All right. Chargers at home -7 against the Jags.
So what's the word on Herbert? I mean, so I'm assuming he's playing. I feel like it would be bigger news if he wasn't. But
It sounds like, yeah, sounds like he's playing. I don't think that he had any sort of major injury.
yeah.
But I will say this: he did not look good.
That's the thing. I mean, I feel like it could be something that's just underreported, just for
Mhm.
maybe his own sake, so people aren't coming in and really making a big deal about it. But, I kind of lean the Jags here. It's not a love, especially on that, round 7. It's just like it's too perfect of a football number. But with the Herbert questions and just how he looked on the, down the stretch, I mean, they did still march down the field and score a touchdown to get the backdoor cover, which was huge. But I think this Jags offense, I think that they're just going to be able to keep up. I don't know if the Chargers offense is going to be as high powered as we expect on a weekly basis, and I think the Jags can do enough to keep up and maybe just keep it close. But at 7, I don't love it as much. I'd like it more if it was like an 8-point spread, just so we could get inside of that touchdoum.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
what do you think?
I was leaning Jags too, but it was a lean. It wasn't like a love or a strong lean.
Yeah.
But the Herbert injury, like I was watching that game, and it just, you know, he may have gotten enough rest to come into this game and be okay, but like he also may be like one big hit away from like having a problem
Yeah, and it
again.
could just be something where it completely changes how he plays. And
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, absolutely.
maybe
He may
more
not take as
conservative
many
with his
risks.
throws. Yeah, he might, maybe be overthrowing just based off of how his motions kind of dictated by,
Might
how
get rid
much.
of it, might get rid of it more quickly or
Yeah,
throw it away, to avoid a big hit if he's feeling pressure.
yeah,
And I do just kind of feel like, I don't know, this feels like a different Jags team. I don't, this doesn't feel like the losers, of the last couple of years. Like, I think these guys know that they can play, they can compete.
yeah,
They've looked competitive the last 2 weeks. I mean, there's been reading a lot about just like how open and electric Christian Kirk has been. Obviously, James Robinson continues to look great. Etienne, the story right now is that Robinson's getting more of the share than
yeah.
Etienne and what people anticipated, but like it's kind of masking the fact that like Etienne's, he's done a pretty nice job.
Yeah, and the
And
opportunities have
he's
been there. I think he'll kind of settle in and
he's
had
coming
some
off a
other options
fucking,
though.
season-long injury himself too.
Yeah,
People forget that.
yeah. This is his rookie year too. So
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, um, it's a good up and coming football team, and um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'd lean Jags, but I don't know that I love it.
yeah.
You
I mean,
know.
the more we talk about it, the more I do start to like it. But I
Yep.
mean, I don't really know where we stand on any of the games. I think we have a couple that we love, but
Yep.
I think we can mark that down, and that can definitely be in the
Yeah.
discussion at the end.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. All right. Next one is Bucks are at home. They're laying a point against the Packers.
Yeah, I mean, this could just be maybe a pass for us. I just think this is a hard game with two teams that you can't really trust, especially the
Yep.
offenses. Cole Beasley will probably be called up. I think maybe I lean the Bucks. I think they're just a better team, so I think they're going to come away with the win.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's just hard. I feel like this could be an ugly game that just goes way under. Um, and it's kind of just a slop fest. With Green Bay, it's hard, right? I mean, I think everybody's kind of waiting on Rodgers to just kind of do what he does every year and start slow and then figure it out and go on a tear. But I think it's going to be harder to come by this year. I think it's tougher than people expected to just lean on Dylan and
Mm-hmm.
Jones, and he doesn't really have the receivers. I mean, he for sure does not have Devontae Adams and the guy that can kind of carry him and naturally give him that floor just because of how good he is. I mean, now he's trying to make it work with Watkins and Lazard and Christian Watson and Romeo
Mm-hmm.
Dobbs. And, it's just tough. I don't know if Rodgers is going to have that top tier season that we see every year. Not that his talent's necessarily falling off, but it's tough to do with just the supporting cast that he has. So
Yeah.
I lean Bucks here. I think that just because they're the 2-0 team, they're the better team. They got Tom Brady. They still have that defense, and Green Bay still got a good defense too. So I think it's going to be a slugfest. Towards the under, and
Yeah.
it could be ugly, but definitely in the Bucks.
Yeah. Yeah. My notes were Bucks are dealing with a lot of injuries. I read that 9 of their 11 projected starters are out. 9 of 11 projected starters at the start of the season.
Yeah.
Green Bay had the bounce back last week that we expected. We talked about that. It's very similar to 2021 in terms of how their season has started, although the makeup of the team is very different. You talked about the supporting cast, like, they got Lazard back, but very different in terms of how they're going to get it done and how they are getting it done. They're just continuing to lean more on kind of that running back tandem of Jones and Dillon. 1 week it's Dillon, the next week it's Jones. I do think looking at Tampa Bay's schedule, it's interesting. I mean, they had the start to their season was brutal. Dallas, New Orleans. Now they've got Green Bay, and then they got KC next week.
Yeah.
They've got an opportunity. Like, this is a vulnerable spot. For Green Bay. It's a very winnable game. They could come out of this week, they could be 3-0 heading into KC with the potential of, at worst being 3-1 getting through the stretch. And then you've got Atlanta, Carolina, and Pitt. So, I think Tampa Bay is going to be feeling pretty good despite everything of like just where they're at. Especially having won a divisional game against the Saints. That's a big win for them. Because now they're that game up. Unlike last year where they lost that one early and suddenly, you're trying to climb out of a hole. The Green Bay run defense has been atrocious. That's one thing. They gave up 126 on the ground against Minnesota. They gave up 180 last week.
Yeah, Montgomery looked great.
Montgomery looked great. Like Chicago was moving the ball on the ground. And I do think if I'm going to lean in a direction, that's kind of where my pick starts. Like Tampa Bay run defense has been stout. I think they can take away Green Bay's strength. Green Bay's run defense has been atrocious. And I think that is still, despite the injuries, a strength for Tampa Bay. I think it's a heavy Leonard Fournette game. I think they're going to move the chains. They're going to run the clock. They're going to grind them down. You keep Rodgers off the field. I think Brady is just going to be the perfect game manager. And I do see Tampa Bay winning this game. It's their first home game. Win this game, get to 3-0, and they just kind of run their way to a victory.
Yeah, I mean, the more we talk about it, the more I start to really love it. Just because of what we're saying. I mean, I just feel like Tampa Bay does win this game, and I think the spread is fair. When you're looking at an offense where Rashad Perriman and Scotty Miller are going to be the number 1 and 2 receiving options, and then a called up Cole Beasley, it's like it's very fair to not really have much trust in that offense. And I think that even still, there's more continuity with that, and Brady has worked with Perriman and he's worked with Miller and all that. And, I guess Cole Beasley it was Brady's request to go out and get him. So, I think they're going to come in, they're going to kind of keep the ship moving. They know that they got a big game next week and, they'd rather be looking at, at worst 3-1 instead of having to not lose and be 2-2. So I think this is one they got to get. I think Green Bay, they've got a lot more that they got to figure out in terms of who's doing what. And the more we talk about it, the more I love Tampa Bay here.
Yeah.
This was a game I came into it. I really didn't have any notes on it. I kind of didn't even really have a lean. But
Brady's 3-1 against the spread against Rodgers, covering the
yeah.
past meetings, including the playoffs. Green Bay 0-4 against the spread in its past 4 road games.
Yeah.
Tampa 8-2 against the spread the past 10 games as a home favorite, 6-1 against the spread in the past 7 in that role.
I mean, I think this could just be one where, they end up winning, by 7 to 10 points. And, it feels like a close game, but then when you take the spread into consideration, you say, oh shit, that really wasn't close at all. And I think we just want to take the better team here.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Next game, Seahawks home, laying 1.5 against the Falcons.
Yeah, it's a stinky game to me. Part of me feels like this is one where, like how you were starting to say that the Falcons might be a little bit better than we think. And I definitely agree. I think that their offense, I think Mariota is, I was higher on Mariota than most coming in this year. Just, I just didn't think he was going to be horrible. And, I think that's exactly what he's showing. And, they're kind of doing it without getting Kyle Pitts involved. And, maybe Pitts looks to get involved. Drake London looks great. Maybe his defenses start to kind of shift more attention to him. That opens things up for Pitts a little bit more. And, maybe this offense can be a little bit more dynamic. But, at the same time, I just feel like the Seahawks, it's more veterans. It's Pete Carroll, veteran head coach at home in Seattle. I do lean the Seahawks here. It's not really a strong lean or anything, but if we're just going every game, we're making picks. It's definitely my lean. It's more of a gut feeling than anything. I just feel like, in this situation, I think this is a Seahawks win.
Okay. I was leaning Falcons here. This was actually the game, where I pulled that stat from. This is where, when I was kind of listening to some opinions about this game, it's where I had gotten the stat about, 0-2 teams versus the non 0-2 teams being 60%. I do feel like the Falcons are better than maybe what many people, certainly myself, thought. They were 10-point dogs last week and they had a chance in that game and they even overcame a pick six. I know they had, what was it, like the block punt for a
Yeah.
return
Yeah.
that kind of got them back into it. So there was a little bit of fluky action, but they also had a pick six at the end of the first half that put them down. I think it was like 14-6, and suddenly they were down 21-6. And
Yeah.
it was like a 10-point swing, and as a 10-point dog, they still managed to overcome it and find a way to stay in that game. Against the Rams team that as bad as they looked in week one, I think is still a good team. They did stay on the West Coast. So they've been practicing, it sounds like, at the University of Washington all week. So kind of doing all the things to put themselves in a position to win this football game. Seattle last week, I think, just taking some stock. And I mean, obviously we were on the right side of that one. We did pick the Niners, and Seattle did not look good.
Yeah.
Just didn't look like a good football team. And again, thinking back to week one, which, this informed our 49ers pick last week. They did get that win, against Denver in week one, but you probably argue that was their Super Bowl. And they also were very fortunate to overcome the two fumbles at the 1 yard line, which kind of helped catapult them to that win in the first place. So, there's a lot of things in terms of how I've been looking at the game that make me lean Falcons, but it is an ugly game. It feels like an ugly pick. And it's maybe one that's too ugly to take.
Yeah. I mean, I go with the home team here, and even looking at those stats, I mean, the Seattle run game just got completely shut down. But I mean, Geno still looks fine. He did throw an interception. They did throw another interception with DJ Dallas. It was just a trick play. He had an awful throw.
Yeah.
So there is also that happened. But I mean, Geno was still 24 of 30. That's 80%, 197 yards, no touchdowns. Did throw a pick, but he's still holding on to the ball. He's still taking care of it. Still a little efficient. So I mean, maybe this just is a game that we end up not taking. But yeah, I think it's more just I lean the home team here. I think Pete Carroll's a better coach than Arthur Smith, and in these matchups, those are things that I just find.
I certainly won't disagree with you on that one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move to the next game. There's a couple. We got 3 games left. Two of them I definitely had some notes on and we're interested in. So the next one is we got the Rams at Arizona. Rams are laying 3.5, so it's another home dog.
So does McVay own Kingsbury? I thought there was something going around about that. Maybe
I think I sent it to you.
Yeah.
So McVay's career record against Arizona, I think, is like 10-1 against the spread. Against Kyler and Kingsbury together, he's 5-1 ATS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did write, though, my note after that is I still do kind of like the Cardinals here. Yeah, I just haven't been I haven't been too high on the Rams. Definitely a little bit of a hangover, it looks like, coming in. I think that maybe the concerns about Matt Stafford and his elbow are definitely legit. It's never good when a team's letting the Falcons of all teams make huge comebacks, and Falcons had a chance at the end. Stafford still threw 2 picks. Henderson, he looked fine. Cam Akers just hasn't been the same. So, and of course, Cooper Kupp's always going to do his thing, and then guys like Higbee and Robinson, they're just going to be in the mix. But these aren't guys that are game-breaking talents right now. So I'm not too big on the Rams. I like the Cardinals coming off of that win that they had. I think that was a big win. That was something that they really needed for morale. I think that's something that can turn them around. And also I just feel like sometimes you look at those trends and it's easy to kind of just fall into it and follow it blindly. But at the same time, um, blind squirrel finding the nut, water finding the level, all that stuff. I feel like, when you get to 10-1 range, 5-1 range against the spread and all that, it's maybe it is worth going to the other side. And even without that trend, I did kind of like the Cardinals here.
Yeah. Um, I was on the other side. I like the Rams. It starts with that stat of McVay owning them, but I think aside from kind of late in that fourth quarter and then overtime, like that Cardinals offense has really, really struggled to get anything going. I do think the Rams D line could feast on that Cards O line this week. Couple other things I was reading about. Arizona secondary is the second worst in coverage in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I do think that could be a tall task for them against that offense. Despite the Stafford elbow thing, like Cup's going to eat. They got Allen Robinson more involved last week. He had a nice game. It just feels like that secondary could have a long, long day. Arizona's D line is also the 22nd worst in the league so far. So in terms of the Rams' biggest weakness, from what I was reading, being the O line, I think it's going to be hard for Arizona to take advantage and exploit that. Which obviously doesn't help their case. So I do in terms of trying not to overreact to that crazy comeback win, I do like the Rams here -3.5.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I just kind of, the Rams are just kind of made for me this year. I don't know. I just don't really see it. And, even, Robinson, he did have a touchdown last week, but, Higbee had 71 yards, Robinson had 53 yards. It's not like
Mhm.
that's, anything too crazy. And, of course, Cooper Kupp is just always going to kind of do his thing. So I look at that and, I see what I think is a pretty mediocre backfield and not what I don't think is going to be great QB play this year. I'm just, the Rams are just kind of a fade for me, especially, you know, uh, I just feel like, looking at 27 points, giving up 27 points and that comeback to the Falcons, I think that's definitely a red flag.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a game that we pass
Yeah.
if we don't feel like we can, agree on a side. So, and we do have. I think we might have enough already, and we still got two to talk about.
Yeah.
Um, all right, let's take a look at the next game. 49ers -1.5 at Denver. So once again, another home dog.
Yeah. So I like Denver here and I like them a lot. I just feel like maybe this is just another opportunity for them to kind of straighten things out, maybe shake the rust off a little bit. They were a team that they weren't playing their starters in the preseason, so there could be just some rust, a little bit of a rust factor in these first two games. I feel like that Seattle game, it was weird. They definitely didn't look good. We could be looking at them a little bit differently. I mean, if they coach that just a little bit better, I mean, they could be a 2-0 team coming into this, and I just feel like there's something weird with San Francisco this year. And, they looked very good last week, even with Trey Lance going down and Jimmy G coming in. They were still able to kind of, still put some points on the board, still cover with some ease. But, I didn't think that was necessarily a good game out of San Francisco. And, we've seen two games. Obviously, their first game was very weird with the rain and everything. But, I haven't seen too fantastic of a team. I just felt like I haven't
Mhm.
really been seeing that. And, to me, it's just kind of another gut feeling. I just see the Broncos at home. I think this is an opportunity for them to kind of get things right. And I feel like, the Niners might be a team that's maybe experiencing a little bit of turmoil. And, this could be an opportunity to kind of get out in front of that. And, before they become a mess, maybe try and jump on that and, take such a close line and, taking an underdog that I think can win outright.
I was on the SF side. I think I do think they're just a better team. I mean, obviously, we didn't get to see a whole lot of Trey Lance in normal conditions. But I do just kind of feel like, despite all the Trey Lance bullshit, I do feel like Jimmy G is just kind of more suited to lead this team. I feel like they click and they work better with him under center. I also feel like our read on Denver with Russell Wilson's been pretty accurate so far. Like, of just like, him not really necessarily being kind of the silver bullet that they thought might, um, take them to the next level. I was also, I don't know if you and I were talking about this or if it was something I was listening to, but it's like, what's the head coach's name for Denver? Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah.
Like he's only there because they thought he was going to be the guy that was going to get Rodgers there.
Yep.
So like, is he even really a head coach? And certainly he has not looked good in the first couple of weeks.
Yeah. So
You
another
know,
thing that I thought too, though, when I say that I feel like it's kind of a get right game for Denver, um, it's a home game and it's also just kind of a familiar foe for Russell Wilson, right? So I just looked up Russell Wilson's 16-4 in his career against the Niners, and
mhm,
then he has a passer rating of 102, which is good. And then I'm trying to do, let's see, so in 20 games, 4,169 yards, 36 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. So he plays well against the Niners too. So I just feel like this is a spot for them. I feel like their offense was starting to kind of figure it out. Like Sutton looked really good last week.
mhm,
Javonte Williams, I don't think they were running the ball too great last week, but he was looking really good in their opener. And I feel like maybe Denver is just a little undervalued now. I think now it's the pendulum's kind of swinging back to a position where, they were very overvalued going into the season because I was very just big on, I didn't think that the Broncos were that much of an upgrade from the Seahawks.
mhm.
But yeah, I mean Javonte Williams, he had 15 for 75 last week too. So he's been playing well in both games. But yeah, I just feel like this is a chance for, Russ to kind of just feel comfortable against a team that he's historically played very well against, had good success against, and kind of get, everybody right. And
Yeah,
Sutton, him and Sutton seem to have that, connection going, and then Javonte is very good too. So, I just kind of give the lean there. I just feel like there's something weird going on in San Francisco with, I think that there's more drama to it with the Trey Lance stuff and Shanahan maybe not wanting him as much, and now he kind of has his boy, and you can make that argument that okay, you can step right in and get right back to it, but there was also a reason that they were looking to move on from him, and of course Jimmy's contract was very expensive, but if they felt like he was worth it, they would have maybe done more to stick by him and not use such a valuable pick to draft his replacement.
yep.
So yeah,
Um,
I just feel it's maybe somewhat of a gut, but yeah, I just feel like this is a get right game for Denver.
the let's see, Garoppolo lost both times to Russ last year. Um, Lost at home 28-21 to Seattle, and then lost on the road at Seattle 30-23. So one score games. But to your point about Russ having success, and especially the two of them going head to head. Um, the other thing too, we talked about this with the Commanders Eagles game. The look ahead for this was Denver -3, and now we're getting them +1.5.
Yeah.
So, again, another spot where there's value there for us taking the dog, especially a home dog. Judy and Pat Surtain have missed the last 2 days of practice. I don't know how serious the Judy thing is, and if it's just more of like they're just keeping him out, but he's going to be ready for the game. So I don't know how much that would impact them in terms of. And the other thing that did concern me a little bit, like San Francisco's run defense is, has been very good. Not just the first two games this season, but just historically very good. So obviously, the kind of that two-headed monster of Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon is very effective for the Broncos. So, how much success are they going to have running the ball? But
Yeah, but at the same time, I'd rather from going against that run defense, right? I mean,
mm,
they can be beat, and
yeah, yeah,
even if it's not the run game tearing them up, you can still beat them, having
yeah,
your run game, be defeated. And I'd rather have that going against a Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon than Rashad Penny and Ken Walker or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, it's maybe a little bit more of a gut feeling than anything, but I like Russell Wilson in the spot, especially against San Francisco, a team that we've seen him beat
he's
so many
been
times.
successful. Yeah, yeah. All right, let's I think I can be swayed into it. Let's so I've got them marked down. Let's talk about the last game and then kind of assess where we're at.
Yep.
So we got the Giants. They're laying a point at home against the Cowboys.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me. I didn't really have much of a read. I don't know if you feel strongly one way or the other. I mean, you know, New York, can they really go to 3-0? I think that's the big question. They're definitely a little bit of a bullshit 2-0. And then
Do
Dallas
they
is a team.
deserve to be 3-0?
Yeah, well, that's the thing is I mean, can't do it, but I mean, we see it happen all the time. We saw it happen last year with the Panthers, where they got off to such a good start. I think they were 3-4-0, and then all of a sudden they kind of ended up just being it for the rest of their season. So it could be following that path. I mean, they definitely. It was very ugly. Statistically, they came, crashing back down to earth last week, and they still came out of it with a win. But, Dallas are interesting. I mean, the 2 times we've seen Cooper Rush start, he covers the spread. Maybe
You know what actually concerns me
what?
is I read a headline today that Jerry Jones said that he would welcome a QB controversy, and that's where I feel like it's now time to fade the boys.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
kind of the thing too. Is I mean, last year when they covered the spread, that was more because I mean, it was just one of those where the Vikings, they were underdogs, and then Dak was
Yeah.
announced out, and then they skyrocketed up, and then that's when you almost have to know to fade them.
Yeah.
And and then I feel like last week too was a very reactionary line, so I feel like maybe Cooper Rush is a little more priced into the spread here, and maybe the value's not there anymore like we have seen in his two other starts, and
Yeah.
I think the Giants might be a little bit better of a team right now. I think they could squeak out a win, but I mean ultimately I don't have much of a side on either.
Tell you, it's interesting for the Giants too. I mean, they got the Bears next week. They could be 4-0.
Yeah, and that's why I mean I kind of lean the Giants here. I just feel like they have the positive momentum. I feel like they're feeling good. But I
Yeah.
don't feel too strong about it, I will say.
Yeah, and I almost want to stop talking about it because in some ways, what I don't want to have happen is we talk ourselves into it, and then it ends up like a Browns Jets thing from last week,
Oh
where it's
yeah.
like two kind of bad teams, and like even though we're maybe on the right side, like something happens and we just get fucked.
Yeah.
Um, so I almost feel like all right, like we lean Giants, that's fine. Let's see what happens. Let's just kind of
Yeah, I
continue
mean
to
I
assess
don't think
both
we're gonna have
teams.
to dip into it.
Yeah, yeah. Um, all right. So ones that I had. All right, let's just go back through this. We had really strong feelings about the following games. Jets as a home dog getting 5.
Yep.
Getting 6 in the Circa. Panthers as a home dog getting 2.5. Colts as a home dog getting 5.5. Commanders as a home dog getting 6.5. Bucs as a home favorite by 1. And then it's a pick 'em in the Circa. And then we did also have a couple other kind of nice. Oh, we had Broncos. Sorry, Broncos as another home dog getting 1.5. A couple other games that I didn't color in, but we talked about. We did have a lean to the Patriots 2.5, again, another home dog. We did have a lean towards the Dolphins, again, another home dog getting 6. Uh, I think that's kind of Titans -2, or I'm sorry, Titans +2 was another lean, but
Yep.
that's kind of where we're at. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's definitely 6 like strong likes, I think, in terms of Jets, Panthers, Colts, Commanders, Bucks, and Broncos.
Yep.
Is there anything in any of those picks that you love less than the others?
Let me look. Hold on. Let me try to. Yeah, because I feel like those are the 6. I think those are the 6 that we really want to pick from, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would say the game that probably scares me the most is that Chiefs one.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like there's like a higher variability that exists in terms of like I would be really sad if we're like sitting there watching the game and like the Chiefs are up by like 4 touchdowns,
Yeah.
and like it just feels like we don't even have a chance.
Yeah.
And we
So
just
one pick I think I really like, and it's the one favorite that we have, is the Bucks
yeah.
-1. I think I really got talked into that.
Okay.
Um, I just really like the Bucs to win there.
Yeah.
So I think we should kind of stick to that, and
Okay.
I think we can put that in the top five.
Okay.
Let me see. Um, I mean, I'm not married really to anything, so I mean, I think I can kind of, almost any of these, even the ones that we just had as likes, even the Pats, the Dolphins, and the Titans. I mean,
Yeah.
I think I kind of like the reasoning. I mean, even with the Titans, it's like I look at that and it's like Vrabel versus McDaniels is almost all I need to see.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's such an interesting matchup. But I definitely like the Broncos in that spot. I know you were a little more iffy, but it sounds like you're a little more convinced now. But I definitely like that spot. That was one that stood out to me. Um,
What if we do this? What if we go Bucks, Broncos, Pats, Dolphins, Titans?
Bucks, Broncos,
Broncos,
Pats, Dolphins.
Dolphins, Titans.
Hmm.
Because there's what's interesting about that mix of games
Yeah,
is we've got two games in which you and I kind of talked each other into it.
yeah,
And then we've got three games that initially, we kind of had as like nice leans,
yeah,
but we didn't love them as much as we initially did some of the other games. But again, thinking about like last week in particular, where like there were a number of games that we kind of talked about and we were a little unsure, but we were kind of leaning in a certain direction, but we just, kind of just didn't pick them, didn't feel like we were as compelled. But I feel like we had a lot of good reasons, to kind of like, and we're still getting three home dogs.
yeah,
Um, but I don't know.
yeah,
We're
yeah. I mean, it is silly, but like I really am starting to like this Titans pick more. I just feel like I think that maybe they could really
I
pull
love
the
the
rug.
Vrabel versus McDaniels is really all I need to see there.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
just
because it's the most frustrating thing when the Titans come to town and then Vrabel's just going, toe to toe with Belichick. It's like, what the hell's going on? I just feel like that's something that's going to carry right over, and
yeah, yeah,
he's familiar with. It's an opponent that he's still familiar with, and he
yeah,
knows how to beat him.
yeah,
No, but I kind of like that philosophy, and like the Pats was a game that it was just like the more that we talked about it, that was definitely my lean, but it was kind of a game I just kind of had off the card. And then it was like the more that we talked about it, the more I kind of became convinced because it's like, we've seen it. We know that Belichick knows how to kind of pull them into the trenches and just kind of keep it muddy. And I think that is a game that the Pats can win outright.
yeah, yep. And then Dolphins, explosive at home, coming off that big comeback. Um, you talked a little bit about some of the injuries in that secondary for the Bills, which maybe could open things up. And I mean, look, like, the Dolphins have some fucking weapons.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they could keep pace. It might be a little bit of kind of the same reason that we were thinking about the Dolphins last week against the Ravens, where it's like, it could be a shootout. It just feels like they maybe have the weapons to keep pace if it goes to that. And, obviously it took a pretty wild, almost improbable comeback, but they were able to do that in part because they've got the weapons. I mean, their receivers are wide open.
Yeah.
Like, I was reading a lot about like, just what's his name? Mike McDaniels or whatever.
He's McDaniel, no S.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
sorry. But Mike McDaniel, like the way he's kind of spreading out that offense, getting them into space, and Tua's hitting them.
Yeah.
Tua's hitting.
Yeah, and I kind of like going just head on with the Bills here and kind of meeting them. They're coming off of some really convincing wins.
Yeah, yep. And
I think
maybe this is the moment.
yeah, it's just kind of like
Um,
a stun spot where it's like you just kind of hit them right in the nose and
yeah,
they don't really know what to do. And I think
And
it's a team. It's just it's a lot of points that they're giving to a team that can definitely go toe to toe with them.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And they're on the road, you know.
Yeah,
But yeah, and again, like I
yeah,
mean,
it's a losable game for them too. I think that's the
it's
important thing.
it's it's a losable game, and even if they do come out of it with a win, it could be the type of game where it's like, it comes down to the end. Maybe they win on a late field goal or something. But you kind of come out of it and you say, like, these two are going to go toe to toe till the end of the season, and there's a good chance they may see each other again
Yeah,
late, like playoff time. Um, we just they may be in a battle for the AFC East all the way to the end.
yeah,
Um, and plus you'll have the Pats there. Like, could be a really fun division to watch all season. So,
yeah,
um, okay, all right. So we're gonna go Pats, Dolphins, Titans, Bucks, and Broncos.
yeah.
All right. Um,
Yeah, and because I do feel like I was starting to maybe love the other picks a little too much, and I could just see, the Panthers kind of falling into maybe a similar spot that we saw the Saints in last week, where
yeah,
you just look at it and then you say, ah, shit, the more I think about it, the Bucks are definitely going to win that, and
yeah,
and that was actually kind of why I was leaning the Cardinals too, where you just saw it's almost like once you start to really notice the trend, and you start to say like, oh, Tom Brady doesn't win or cover against the Saints in the regular season. Let's just bet on the Saints then. That was kind of the same vibe I was getting with the Cardinals, where it's like,
yeah.
it just seems so obvious, especially at such a small
Well,
number. Take the Rams, and then it makes me interested in taking the other side, and it's it's the same reason
yeah.
why I kind of like the
Sometimes by the time you spot a trend, you may have missed it.
yeah,
It's tough,
exactly.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and which again, going back to that Dolphins game, like now the big trend is that Josh Allen thing with the names, what is it, 0-9 against teams that don't have an O
Yeah.
in the quarterback's last name. Now that the trend's been identified, has the window closed.
Yeah.
Um, so you go Dolphins there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I like it. I like it. I
Yeah.
like the card.
All right.
Well, we're on to week 3, 5-0.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Sounds good.
All right. I will see you later.
All right. I'll talk to you.
All right. Bye.